We are in the book of Hosea tonight. Hosea. I know we don't spend a lot of time here in Hosea, which is why we're doing it tonight. Hosea has 14 chapters, but no one looks at any but the first 3 of them. And I think that's probably okay. The rest of the chapters kind of repeat what's already been said in more or less detail. Hosea is a prophet primarily to the northern kingdom of Israel, but he prophesies during the last of the great kings of Israel. See in verse 1, the word of Yahweh which came to Hosea the son of Beeri in the days of, these are the kings of Judah, Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, and in the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash, king of Israel. So this is Jeroboam the second. He's the, as I said, the last great king of Israel. There was a king named Jehu, and if you remember King Ahab, King Ahab and his family were very wicked, and so God decided to do away with Ahab and his family. And he sends Elisha to anoint this man named Jehu, who is captain of the guard. And Jehu is commissioned with the task of eliminating the household of Ahab. And so he does. He goes and he does so with great vengeance and bloodshed. And because he, this is what the prophet tells him, because he does what is right in the sight of the Lord, not overall, but in the act of cutting off the house of Ahab, he is promised to have 4 generations on the throne, himself and then his son, grandson, and great-grandson. And the great-grandson is Jeroboam the second. Well, Jeroboam the second is already on the throne. That's the 4th generation. That's the last one that was promised. And after Jeroboam, there are going to be a handful of really poor kings, really poor leaders, who are all going to struggle for the throne all at once. And this is really the end of the kingdom of Israel. And this is where Hosea jumps in. He jumps in at this moment at the end. And you see in verse 2, when Yahweh first spoke through Hosea, Yahweh said to Hosea, "Go take for yourself a wife of harlotry and of children of harlotry, for the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking Yahweh." So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and gave birth to a son for him. And Yahweh said to him, "Name him Jezreel," after the valley of Jezreel. "For yet a little while, and I will visit the bloodshed of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause the kingdom of the house of Israel to cease. And it will be in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel." Now, Jezreel is significant here because this is where Jehu rode through and where he cut off the kingdom or the family of Ahab. And there's this really gruesome scene which, despite it being very gruesome, is a very interesting story to read, where he summons 70 of Ahab's sons, which is a lot of sons. He summons 70 of his sons to this great banquet and just slaughters them in cold blood. It doesn't feel like you're reading Bible anymore. It feels like you're, reading something medieval. I mean, it sounds like it should be in a movie. Which, as a side note, I've thought for a long time the story of Jehu would actually make for a really interesting movie, but I don't think anyone in Hollywood is jumping in. But anyway, while God was pleased with Jehu's efforts to remove Ahab and to remove his house, he isn't necessarily pleased about the way in which Jehu does so, with deception and murder, because that's what he resorts to, is murder, not just executions, but cold-blooded murder. And he says the time has come for that bloodshed to be repaid. And so the first son is named Jezreel, but Jezreel isn't the one that we remember. Verse 6, she conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. And Yahweh said to him, name her Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel, that I would ever forgive them. But I will have compassion on the house of Judah and save them by Yahweh their God, and I will not save them by bow, sword, battle, horses, or horsemen. And she weaned Lo-Ruhamah, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. And Yahweh said, name him Lo-Ammi, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. And I want you to see, there's a subtle thing that happens here. Look at verse 3. It says, she conceived and gave birth to a son for him. But notice the change in verses 6 and 8, where it says, she conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. She conceived and gave birth to a son. And there's an implication here. Remember what Hosea was told from the get-go. There's an implication here that those are not Hosea's children. Because who knows whose they might be? Now, this wouldn't have the same effect today because we've got DNA tests, so you lose some of the effect. But back then, you don't know. Maybe he can tell. Sometimes you can tell. Sometimes you say, that baby does not look like its father, which means that's probably not his father. And you wonder what's going through Hosea's mind as he sees this, and look at the names that they're given corresponding to this. No mercy, not my people. Why? Because they're the product of infidelity. And Hosea is, I've always felt bad for Hosea. God has some interesting commissions for some of the prophets in the Old Testament. And there are some preachers who want to be like the prophets in the Old Testament. I, for one, don't have any desire to be like the prophets in the Old Testament. I've got no desire to be like Hosea, because, the commission that he is given is an incredible one. He's called to model in his life the relationship of God with his people. Now, we say, well, that's what marriage is for, right? Marriage is a symbol of God's relationship with his people. Ephesians chapter 5, right? That's what it's supposed to be. Well, that's what Hosea's marriage is as well. It's just the darker side of that relationship. That Hosea remains faithful to his wife even though she does not remain faithful to him. And she goes out and he only wonders what she's going to do tonight, where she's going to be, and what she's going to be up to. And he invests in her and he takes care of her. And he raises these children, and he knows that this is the product of her own wickedness. And God looks at the people, and they have profited in illegal and immoral ways, and yet he continues to care for them, even though they have not remained faithful to him. Look in chapter 2. This is where things start to we see the other side of things. Now, what do you expect? Well, I guess before we look at chapter 2, what do you expect Hosea to do? What would any sane man do at this point in time? Is he keeping this wife around? You're expecting him to try to find a way to divorce her as fast as he can, but Hosea doesn't seem to be interested in doing that. Instead, God says to him, say to your brother, and this is back to the preaching, back to the message that he's giving to the children of Israel. Say to your brothers, Ammi, my people. Say to your sisters, Ruhamah, you have received mercy. Contend with your mother, contend, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. And let her remove her harlotry from her face and her adultery from between her breasts, lest I strip her naked and set her forth as on the day when she was born, and make her like a wilderness, and make her like a dry land, and put her to death with thirst. Also I have no compassion on her children, because they are children of harlotry. For their mother has played the harlot, she who conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers who give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. Therefore I will hedge up her way with thorns, and I will build a wall against her, so that she cannot find her paths. So she will pursue her lovers, but she will not overtake them. And she will seek them, but she will not find them. Then she will say, I will go now, and I will return to my first husband, for it was better for me then than now. Now she does not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the new wine, and the oil, and multiplied silver and gold for her, which they used for Baal. There's a lot of mixing of the metaphors here. But you see the pain that's being expressed here. I mean, this is the voice of a husband who's distraught. And he wants his wife back. He still loves her. And he wants her back, and he has this deep sense of betrayal and pain that she would turn away from him, and she would take the gifts that he has provided for her. He's been trying to take care of her and sustain her, and she's taking those things to these other men. And he thinks to himself, maybe somehow I can get her back. I can show her that how much better things were when she was with me before she left. Maybe I can bring her back if she can just remember what it was really like. If she can remember how good things were when we were together and we had a happy, healthy relationship. Maybe we can fix this. But this is the pain here. And you see in verse 14 that the Lord has a plan to call her back. He says, therefore, behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak to her heart. I'm going to have a conversation with her. And I will give her vineyards from there and the valley of Achor as a door of hope. And she will sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. And it will be in that day, declares Yahweh, that you will call me Ishi, that means my husband, and will no longer call me Baali, which was a word that could actually mean my husband, but there's obviously a pun here because that's also the name of his competitor, so to speak. It's the name of the other man. I don't want you to call me by that name anymore. We're going to use this other word. So that I will remove the names of the Baals from her mouth, so that they will be remembered by their names no more. And in that day I will cut a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, the birds of the sky, the creeping things of the ground. I will break the bow, the sword, and the war from the land, and I will make them to lie down in security. And I will betroth you to me forever. Indeed, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in loving kindness and in compassion. And I will betroth you to me in faithfulness. Then you will know Yahweh. He wants their relationship to be restored, and to be restored in its perfection. And he wants to provide good things and to restore the Israelites back to the blessings that he once gave them. But this isn't just going to happen out of nowhere. I mean, you can't just move on as if nothing has happened. And there's a line in here in verse 15. It says, I will give her vineyards from there, and the valley of Achor as a door of hope. Now, the valley of Achor, is mentioned in the book of Joshua. And the valley of Achor is where the Israelites gathered to stone Achan and his family. Do you remember this? When they went up against the city of Ai, they lost the battle, which shouldn't have happened. And in confusion, they turned to the Lord and they asked, Lord, why did you not fight this battle for us? And he says, it's because there is a sin in the camp. There is wickedness among you. And they take lots and they identify who it is, and it's this man named Achan, and he has taken, this wasn't permitted, but in the battle at Jericho, he had taken some of the items that were not to be taken. They were not to be seized as spoil, but he took some gold, and he took some nice garments, and he said, this isn't really going to hurt anyone, and he hides it under his tent, right? So no one can. But God knew. And he's caught, he's given a chance to admit what he's done, and he doesn't do it until there's really no option left. He gives them the instruction that they're to stone him and his family for this sin. And they do. They take the family out to the valley of Achor, and they stone the family, and then they go back, and they're able to take the city, and God is on their side once again. And so the valley of Achor is it's a symbol that their relationship with God can be restored once they resolve the sin. Once they resolve the sin, there is still hope. It's not that God has abandoned them or God doesn't want to help them. It's that while there's sin in their midst, God can't be among them. Hosea brings this back up, and he says the valley of Achor is a door of hope. There's a chance. You can be right with me again. I just need you to stop your spiritual adultery. I need you to stop going back to these gods and come to me. And if you're willing to do that, we can have a good relationship once again. You can be restored to me again, which is what we call reconciliation. And so we come to chapter 3. Then Yahweh said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by her companion and is an adulteress. Even as Yahweh loves the sons of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love raisin cakes. So don't eat raisin cakes. So I bargained for her for myself for 15 shekels of silver and a homer and a half of barley. A homer is 6 bushels or 130 liters, which I suppose is 40 gallons. So this is about 60 gallons of barley. I don't even know what that looks like, but I guess that was meaningful to them. But he buys her back, okay? And we have a word for that. We have a word for purchasing someone back, which is redemption. He redeems her. And then I said to her, you shall stay with me for many days. You shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man. So I will also be toward you. I'm going to be faithful to you. You're going to be faithful to me. For the sons of Israel will remain for many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, without ephod or household idols. And afterward, the sons of Israel will return and seek Yahweh their God and David their king, and they will come in dread to Yahweh and to his goodness in the last days. And here and throughout the rest of the book, there's this prophecy that the relationship will be restored, but obviously it isn't happening anytime soon. This doesn't happen immediately. Instead, shortly after Hosea's ministry is over, or sometime during his ministry even, the Assyrians come down and they seize the city of Samaria. And there's this kind of funny moment. Look at Hosea chapter 10. This is very funny to me. Hosea chapter 10, verses 5 and 6. This book happens during the reign of Jeroboam II, who was the last king of Israel, last great king of Israel. The first king of Israel was Jeroboam I. So there you go. You got Jeroboam at the beginning, Jeroboam at the end. Jeroboam I set up these golden calves in the cities of Bethel and Dan. And Bethel was about 12 miles away from Jerusalem, on the southern tip of the northern kingdom. And Dan was at the very far north. But Hosea doesn't ever call the city Bethel. Bethel means the house of God. He doesn't call it Bethel. He calls it Beth-aven, which means the house of wickedness or the house of iniquity. So he says in verse 5 of Hosea 10, the dweller of Samaria will fear for the calf of Beth-aven, the calf at Bethel. Indeed, its people will mourn for it, and its idolatrous priests will cry out over its glory, since it has gone into exile from them. The thing itself will be carried to Assyria as a tribute to King Jareb. Ephraim will receive shame, and Israel will be ashamed of its own counsel. And apparently, this was something the Assyrians thought was fun. It was a hobby of theirs. They would go into these kingdoms that they were about to take over, and they'd have these god nappings. Okay, this was a hobby of theirs. They would steal their gods and make a big show of it. And it's funny, right? Because this is your God that was supposed to protect you. Well, we just stole your God. What are you going to do about it? And he says the Assyrians are going to march in and they're going to steal this lover. They're going to kidnap him away, and you're going to cry over that. You're going to cry and mourn that he has been taken when I was always right here. I was here to take care of you and to protect you. And this is what's going to happen. The Assyrians are going to come. They're going to take all these gods. They're going to take the people. And what's interesting is God tells them in the book of Hosea. Hosea is a love letter, basically, to his estranged wife, that I always loved you. I always loved you, even when you were adulterous, even when you were unfaithful. I always loved you. And you never understood that. And this is the message that God has for us, that when we are unfaithful, that He still loves us. When we sin against Him, He doesn't suddenly hate us for our sin. He loves us and He wants us back. And He has done and will do everything He can to bring us back. But He needs us to be faithful. He needs us to be faithful, because if we aren't faithful, He can't take us back. And that is, in short, the message of hope. Each of us struggles to remain faithful to God at all times, but He loves us and He's patient with us, even even though we've sinned against him, and he's willing to take us back. And that's the plea. The plea is that if you aren't faithful to him, if you haven't been, to come back, to restore yourself, and restore the relationship, because he's put the ball in your court. So if you have any need, please come while we stand.